In this session, I'm going to be covering the lock screen. The lock screen is the image that appears to the end user when their PC is locked. So either if they've manually locked it or if you're required to enter a password on interruption of the screensaver. If I click the Windows L key, my screen locks. It is this image that you are now able to control using your lock screen. Put my password back in. You sequence the lock screen by clicking on Modules in CLA, clicking on Lock Screen. This will open your Manage Lock Screen Images screen, which will show you the current month that you are working in. You are able to sequence lock screens in future months by clicking on the little arrow, and you are able to sequence as far as your license is valid until. We're going to work in the current month, which in this case is August. This grid at the top shows your available lock screen content. If the image that you are wanting to sequence as a lock screen does not exist in this available content grid, you do need to set this up in your content library. If you have not yet done so, please refer to the section on managing the content library. If you are following along in a CLA manual, I am referring to the section called Sequencing Lock Screens, and I'm going to be working through the worked example. First thing I'm going to do is include the lock screen blood drive by selecting it, and the lock screen cybersecurity by selecting it. If you are wanting to check that the content you're selecting is correct, you can click onto the preview icon in the View column, which will give you a preview of that content. Once you've selected the content you would like to sequence, you include it by clicking on the Include Selected Items button, which moves it out of the top grid into your selected content for sequence month grid at the bottom. This is where you're actually going to define the sequence for your lock screen images. Lock screens can only contain images. It cannot contain any animation. To rearrange or reorder items, you simply select the item you're wanting to move. Using the buttons to the left, your up and down buttons, you're able to move it in the sequence until it is in the order that you'd like it to display. If you're wanting to modify the duration of an item, so maybe we have changed our minds and instead of the 15 seconds that we defined in the content library, we would like to change that to 10 seconds. There are two ways to modify the duration. Either you double click into the cell you're wanting to modify and change it, or you're able to select multiple items and use the Change Duration button at the bottom of the screen. To change the effective dates, so here, your effective dates in your lock screen sequence control the actual dates that you would like this content to start showing and to stop showing. You are able to set up content in advance. So if you wanted to select one lock screen that must show this week, another lock screen that must show the week after, another lock screen that must show the week after, you could set them all up now, promote them to live, and each week they would change accordingly. We're going to change this blood drive lock screen to only show today by double-clicking into the cell, selecting the effective from and effective to dates. Alternatively, you can also multi-select the items and use the Change Effective Dates button at the bottom. Right, the next thing we're going to do is modify the targeting. The targeting can be accessed in this column here, which says users, by double-clicking onto an item. So let's say the cybersecurity item. Double-click, it opens up your targeting screen. The category that this item was saved into was targeted to CLA all users. You are able to modify the targeting in the screen. So perhaps this campaign mustn't run to all users, it must only run to the training users. So you would select all users, remove it from the right-hand side, find the group that you're wanting to target, in the left-hand side, select that group and add it to your targeting until the right-hand side represents your intended target audience for that item. If you do need more information on the targeting screen, please refer to the section called Targeting Explained. Once you're happy, you apply it, and it will change the targeting on that item. Again, if you're wanting to change the targeting on multiple items, you can select them and use the Target Users button at the bottom of the screen to change them all at the same time. To check your Who is Targeted report or the status of your exposure, you double-click onto the question mark under Target. It opens up your Who is Targeted report, and it will give you a summary of how many users you've targeted. Of those users, how many are active on CLA, in which case your anticipated exposure on this item is 33%. 3 out of the 9 users that you are intending to reach will possibly receive this content. You are able to export this report to Excel, and you are able to escalate if necessary to your IT department. Once you are happy that that is your lock screen sequence, you click on the Save Lock Screens button at the bottom. It warns you that the lock screen sequence is only visible to staging users until promoted. Click on Yes, and your lock screen sequence has been saved for the month. If you're wanting to preview your lock screens content before the campaign goes live to the rest of the audience, just to make sure that it looks correct and it works as you expect, you can click on the Display Lock Screen button at the top of the page. It asks if you want to synchronize. You do need to say yes when it prompts for that. And in a short while, as soon as my PC is finished doing a synchronize, my screen will lock, and you would see those 2 items in rotation. The one will display for 10 seconds, the next one will display for 10 seconds. Okay, there's the blood drive. It will stay on my screen for 10 seconds before it changes to the cybersecurity, which will stay on my screen for 10 seconds, and then it will loop back round to the beginning until either the user's screensaver kicks in or until I interrupt, put in my password, log back in, and continue working. Okay. If you are wanting to modify a sequence, you're wanting content to stop showing, you are able to remove it by selecting it, clicking on Remove Selected, selecting your new campaign that you're wanting to sequence at the top of the screen. Perhaps it's these COVID-19 rules. Include the selected, ensure that your duration is right, your dates are right, and your target users are correct. Save the lock screen sequence. And again, if you are wanting to see that lock screen before promoting it to live, you click on your Display Lock Screen button. When it asks you to synchronize, you're able to synchronize, and you will now start seeing the updated content. There's the first rule, it will show for 5 seconds. The second rule will show for 5 seconds. Back to cybersecurity, and it will keep playing in a loop. Put my password back in. Okay. Once you are happy that that is what you would like your users to be seeing, you would promote this content to live. So you have 2 tabs. If you need more information on the staging and live concept within CLA, please refer to the video called Staging and Live Explained. But at the moment, your live users are seeing nothing. So the last step is to promote your content to live. Put in the password. It says you're going to be promoting this content. Say yes. And that content is now promoted to live, and users will start pulling and seeing that campaign. If you have got to the point in your campaign that something needs to stop displaying, or if a campaign changes and you are asked to remove a lock screen, the way that you remove the lock screen is by selecting it, clicking on Remove Selected, and saving the sequence. Right? If you have a look at your Live tab, your users are still seeing that lock screen that you removed because you need to promote that change to live. So your final step in removing a lock screen is to promote your change to live. See? Right? At this stage, if you now have a look at your Live tab, your end user is no longer seeing that image that you removed. Very important to note is that any changes you make, whether you're changing dates, whether you're changing targeting, duration, removing an image, adding an image, any change that you make needs to be made in your staging tab, saved, and then promoted to live for it to actually take effect in the end user's environment.